Hello and welcome to Cover Story. Today I am sitting with one of my favorite guests, author Amish Tripathi. In fact, we know him as author Amish. He's just come out with his latest book, which is here in front of us, Idols. But, thank you Amish. But as a special bonus, we also have his co-author Bhavna Roy with us. She is his sister. Bhavna is a qualified IAS officer. After that, she worked as a volunteer with special children and then with an NGO in Nashik. This is Bhavna and Amish's second book. It's the companion to Dharma. And Amish, of course, well known. He's been one of the longest serving directors at the Nehru Center. We've all been reading his Ramchandra series, his Shiva trilogy. And in fact, we had a conversation on your last book, which was on the Ravan book. But Amish, Idols is a very interesting book, and the fact that, over here you've picked up a very controversial topic because, you're talking about Murti Puja, and you're actually, in an age where the liberals and everybody looks up and says, okay, Murti Puja kaun karte hain, and, this kind of looked down upon. You are justifying it, you're finding an explanation for it. So just, what was the trigger for the book? And tell us first, both of you, what the book is about. Amish first.
Well, the trigger was various incidents that happened. Most of my readers, as you know, are the youth. I've met youth who say that, we are very proud Hindus, but we are not idol worshippers because we know idols are not gods. We've had debates and discussions with people who've come home at times and who say, don't use the term idol worshipping, say Murti Puja, because idol worshippers were what the Greeks or the Celts or the Egyptians did. So, I actually told them, then we should throw those cultures under the bus. Is that what you're saying?
They'll say yes.
And, this is India, among the last surviving idol worshipping cultures. We are the only pre-Bronze Age culture that is still alive. And even here, a song like Patthar Ki Puja Karke Hari Mein Hari can get made. Think of the words. Someone actually writes that song.
In your book also say Hari na Hari.
Yeah, correct.
You say the words together, you can interpret
and common people make such a song a great hit, right? So we were exploring why is it that Indians think this way, even though we are the last surviving idol worshipping culture. And over the last 2000 years, there's been a tide of history. Idol rejecting cultures went around the world massacring millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of idol worshipping people across the world for just one crime alone, that they worshipped idols, right? And that's how most of the idol worshipping cultures died out. They were killed, right? But you find almost no case study of the reverse. No idol worshipping culture went around the world saying, if you're not worshipping an idol, I will kill you, I'll kill your entire village, I'll kill your entire country, your civilization, destroy your universities, destroy your worship places. No idol worshipping culture did this. And it's worth exploring. Why not? What is it about idol worshipping cultures that makes us intuitively liberal, right? And if we are among the last surviving, then it is our duty to speak up for this culture. We Indians have to speak up for it. Because I'm not saying all idol rejecting cultures are bad. There are good things in them as well. Or that we are perfect, idol worshippers are perfect. We have some faults too. But we must speak up for our way of life.
So Bhavna, taking off from where we spoke about the fact that you're not saying that it is a good thing or a bad thing, but everything has pluses and minuses, and idol worship is something that, from what I can gather from the book, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people want to have a personalized form or picture of a god, which helps them identify. But doesn't that make it also very subjective? My god is the way I see. Some people would identify with Shiva, some with Ganesh, some with another god.
But that is the idea, one of the ideas behind idol worshipping, because, I would say, Priya, that in the recent years, self-improvement, transformation, self-work, self-understanding, these kinds of, growth, personal growth. These concepts have fallen on the shoulders of fragile shoulders of relationships, particularly the marital relationship. You're supposed to, you help me understand myself, and I'm supposed to help you understand yourself. And this is a growth story. Also work, we look for self-development and growth and personal sort of a flowering from our workspaces. These are things that human beings turn to communities and religion in an earlier era. This is placing tremendous pressure on relationships today, and it's making the workplace a bit wonky. Work is not about work anymore.
I can see how you're related. We both call it as it is.
It's making it a little strange. Work is not about work anymore. Business is not about money making, or the profit motive. It's about personal growth and self exploration. We want to take, self-exploration and exploration of life itself back to where it belongs, spirituality and religion.
But then again, Amish, today is also Gurpurab when we are recording this. And, there's that famous story of Guru Nanak Ji where he says, he was sleeping with his feet before a temple and somebody said, "Kyun so rahe ho?" So he says, point my feet in the direction where there is no God. So God is formless. Ek Omkar Satnam, Nirgun, Nirvay. So how then do you say, there is that school of thought? And here you're giving him a form and a shape and you're bowing to him, you're feeding the statue milk. How do you explain that?
There's a very fundamental philosophical difference in walking your own path and then saying every other path is false and you will burn in hell if you don't follow my path. That's a very different approach. It's not that we did not have idol rejectors in India. We did. It's not that we did not have atheists in India. The Charvaks, Mimamsas, Sankyas, they were all atheists, right? But India and dharmic religions always had an approach of Ekam Sat Vipra Bhahuta Vadanti. Truth is one, but the wise speak it as many. So, yes, today is Guru Purab. Many of the Sikhs don't believe in idol worshipping, but they will not go around cutting your head off if you worship an idol. They don't say that. They said, you do what you want to do. I will not worship an idol. Fair point, right? Which is a similar approach to those who say, I'll worship an idol. I'm not forcing you to worship an idol. Don't do it if you don't want to. Where is the fundamental philosophical difference? And I include Indian Islam, Indian Christianity also within this group. Because what is actually worshipping at a dargah, right? So, in fact, in the Pew survey, it had shown that 90% of Indian Muslims and Indian Christians also believe in the concept of karma and dharma, right? The fundamental difference in the philosophical outlook is the idol rejecting cultures say that divine is outside of the universe, is a specific one male God, and the universe itself is in some ways profane and the product of the original sin of guilt, right? Whereas the idol worshipping or the non-idol rejecting cultures say the entire universe is divine. You and me are divine. The earth is divine. The mountains, nature. So we are natural environmentalists because environment is not a resource to be exploited. It's a goddess to be worshipped. That's where Murti Puja also comes from. That essentially it focuses our attention to a form of divinity which resonates with us. Which is why you'll find that most idol worshippers, or you could say idol worshipping adjacent cultures, have a comfort with multiple truths. They'll say, "Bhai, I'm following my path, you follow your path, we're all going to the same goal at the end of the day." Which is why they never went around massacring millions simply because of them worshipping differently.
So you're saying they are more liberal than those who...
They are intuitively much more liberal. In the West, for example, they've had just a few decades of what you can call chaos with immigration. Their liberalism is already fraying, right? India suffered 1,000 years of invasion. After that, 1947, we get our own state. First thing we do, we'll be liberal and secular. And this thing that the state enforced liberalism and secularism is not true. The state tried to enforce English and Hindi across the country. How did that go? Right? So if the people don't buy into it, the Indian state cannot enforce it. Right? Liberalism and secularism is an Indian value. The state hasn't imposed it from Delhi. It's the way our people are, and a fundamental reason for this is the way we approach religion.
Wow. Is that, just one more political question for you, is this anything true with, there is a lot of revival of temples, we are rebuilding temples, the BJP especially is focusing a lot on religion. So is there political messaging here?
I don't want to get into politics, but this is perhaps the greatest era of temple rebuilding in the last many centuries. And it's not just one political party. In Telangana, temples are being rebuilt. That's not BJP. In Maharashtra, Gujarat, in various other states, in West Bengal, I see is a national revival. And it's very good that there are some parties supporting this because I think this is good. Do you know that from the 12th century, from the slave dynasty till around 1830, the British era, not one new temple was built in Delhi. Do you know that? If you look across North India, Karnataka upwards, you don't find any freestanding temple that's older than 800 or 900 years old. Why? Because they were all destroyed, right? The only place you can see the more ancient temples is in Tamil Nadu or Kerala, where the invaders hadn't reached deep enough, right? And this is not true only of India. You go to Greece, you see the murtis of Athena, same thing, nose cut off, arms cut off. You go to Egypt, it was a global phenomenon. And again, I would clarify, you shouldn't say all Christians are Muslims. It was two specific communities, European Christians and Turkic Muslims. It's not that Indonesian Muslims did anything or African Christians did anything. So it was these two specific groups over the last 2000 years, which has been recorded repeatedly by many historians.
हम कहेंगे कि अमीश की किताब पढ़ेंगे और मंदिर और बनाएंगे. But Bhavna, in fact, I want to tell my viewers also and Amish's readers and Bhavna's that this book, as opposed to other books, is actually it's got a very nice format. There is a conversation taking place between a family where it's like a Socratic dialogue where they actually question. There's a believer, disbeliever. There is various people. There is of course the family elder. So a lot of questions come out in that conversational form. And you are both, part of a family. And, is this something that used to happen in your homes also? And what made you think of this format, Bhavna?
So the credit for the format goes entirely to Amish. Let me share this with you.
Was he the one asking questions or answering questions?
Even more fundamental. He created the characters. You see, in the creative field, Amish and I are a bit of a yin and yang combination. I'm the Prakriti to his Purush, in the sense, I have ideas in my head, and my ideas can spill all over the place. I had initially written actually a single manuscript, which has been converted into 2 books, Dharma and Idols.
Okay.
And I had sent it to Amish. And he called me up and said, Didi, this is just not working. It's extremely academic and it's difficult to work your head around it. So I said, okay, what do I do? He said, okay, you leave it to me. He created this lovely family.
Yeah.
And
I love the way they keep having samosa breaks and pizza breaks.
And wine breaks.
And wine, yeah. That is true.
So there is Dharmaraj and there's Lopamudra, the old couple, and their daughter Gargi and the son-in-law Nachiket. These characters were Amish's genius. And even the naming, the nomenclature is not casual. It has, Dharmaraj and Nachiket, go back to the Kathopanishad, the great dialogue between Dharmaraj, Lord Yam himself, the god of death, and Nachiket, the quintessential disciple, figuring out life and living and Atman and Brahman. Lopamudra, the mother-in-law, is, harks back to our Rigveda. She was a great Rishika, the wife of Agastya Rishi. Her reincarnated form is actually the river Kaveri that is being fought over by 2 states, unfortunately, in current times. She is being fought over. Gargi, the daughter, harks back to the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. She was also a Rishika, a feisty feminist from the ancient days. So, he created this nomenclature, this lovely family, the conversations. We added 2 characters in Idols, Anirban and Dr. Adarsh, which again was Amish's genius.
Wow.
So,
I like him. He's.
You like Anirban?
Yeah,
So
and Dr. Adarsh also.
So can I tell you the genesis of Anirban?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, why did he take birth? So I do believe that fortunate are the authors who are blessed with extremely tough editors.
Okay.
Because our editor, gave a huge pushback to the first version of the manuscript. And it first came to me and I balked because, books are the babies of the author, very personal. And there was a horrific, kind of a pushback with very, very firm, strong words. I called up Amish. I said, gosh, now what are we to do? He said, well, let's create a character and let's put the words of the editor in the mouth of this character.
That is why he is the way he is.
Yeah,
the
which
skeptic.
is why Anirban was born. And then again, Amish, he said, Didi, Anirban is a lovely character, but we need to create a foil for this man. And thus was born Dr. Adarsh.
But Amish, how do you, and in fact, I wanted to also, before I go into the book, you just come back from this Oxford Union debate where you also, spoke about, the topic was God is a delusion. So, that's tying in with a lot of the skeptics about who don't believe in Murti Puja, etc. I'm waiting for that debate to drop on social media, but tell us a bit about that.
It was fascinating, and you can imagine this subject, at Oxford, which is, quite leftist in orientation. And the subject being God is a delusion. And of course, we were saying, no, God is not a delusion. I think it was an interesting debate because many of the people saying God is a delusion were atheists and Western atheists. Really intelligent people, Alex and Dan Barker, very intelligent people. Richard Dawkins was also there, supporting them. But their entire conception of atheism is a reaction to the Abrahamic religions. So they are prepared only for that kind of argument. And many of the Western atheists exhibit characteristics of the Abrahamic religions as well. So they see the world in binaries, good, evil, you're either on my side or you're against me.
Yeah.
Which, the Dharmic religions, we don't see it that way. Right? We don't see the world in binaries. So I guess many, particularly, Lord Singh, who was a Sikh gentleman out there, and me, and I was representing the Hindu point of view. We, I guess, came out of left field for them because they don't know how to react where a religion says we don't have a concept of blasphemy. We have no problem with science. We are not saying you're with us or against us. You can be an atheist and still be a Hindu. And I quoted ancient schools like Sankhyas, Mimamsas, who are ancient schools, but they're atheists. They don't believe in a creator God, no problem, right? Jaina, Bodha, these two, they have very strong atheist schools. So many of their arguments against religion are essentially arguments more against the Abrahamic religion rather than all religions. And the last thing which I left out there is you have every right to be an atheist, but at least I believe that we must debate, right? But this can only be said in Hindi. शब्दों की कुछ मर्यादा होनी चाहिए. I'm not a Christian, but if I see a Western atheist referring to Jesus Christ in a particular way, or even I feel bad, यार ये मतलब question, but शब्दों की कुछ मर्यादा होनी चाहिए. You're talking about a divine figure, right? Which is at least maybe that is something that we Indians can teach the West of how because our traditional way we can have debates, but it's always Satyam Bruhat, Priyam Bruhat, na Bruhat Satyam Apriyam. Speak the truth, but speak it with love. Learn the value of good manners. There are certain words that should not be used, even if you're opposing religion. Yeah.
Now you talk about harmony and disharmony, and when disrespect comes in, that creates you
can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yes, that is a very quotable quote. But you also talk about the importance of the concept of Isht Devta. Can you explain what exactly do you mean by that? Does it mean a personalized God? Just explain you better at it.
I think Didi would say this beautifully, but I'll just say it very crisply and then leave it to Didi. That there is, of course, a Nirgun Nirakar, formless divine. That is a part of all the Dharmic religions. We have that concept. But it's also believed that human beings need a way to come closer to that, because often Nirgun Nirakar becomes very difficult to understand. And that's why Ishta Devta actually helps it. It's in a way a conduit to get closer to that, and also works at more of what our personal issues are. All of us are different. And then Ishta Devta actually works for us. I'm by nature a slightly rebellious person. So I'm obviously attracted to Lord Shiva. Someone else, may be a feminist and therefore is obviously attracted to Devi, right? Someone else may be a compliant person, therefore obviously attracted to Lord Ram. But sorry, I've taken too much time. I think you'll say it best.
No, actually, when I picked up your books, I was thinking which book to give as a gift to whom regarding the nature of their personality. So what he said is, actually, I think it works. But
So, Priya, I'll explain the concept of the Ishta Devata through an anecdote, two anecdotes actually, about my mother and myself. Because, to begin with, an Ishta Devata is a chosen deity, god or goddess. And you get pulled towards an Ishta Devata or an Ishta Devati without understanding why. Understanding, your heart gets pulled.
Subjective.
Yes, it's it's a heart thing, not a mind thing. We're four siblings, and me, the eldest, the bully, and Amish, of course, has a twin, Ashish, and then
I didn't know that.
12 minutes elder.
Yep.
Oh, he's elder.
Yep.
He's elder.
Hierarchy counts.
Okay, yes. Especially if you're the older one.
And then there's Anish, who's 2 years younger than me. I'm talking about the time then when I must have been 11 or 12 years old, the oldest. We used to live in a hick town called Kansbahal near Raurkela in Odisha at the time. And my parents were first in Mumbai, and then my dad got transferred to Kansbahal. He worked with L&T at the time. And my brother and I, the older two, were sent to boarding schools in Mussoorie. And the twins were too young at the time, so they remained at home, but they were speedily sent to Ooty, a few years later. So when Anish and I used to come home, for our break, it used to be Jashan time, celebration time. The whole family is together. My father was a bit of a flamboyant, fun, human being. And every weekend we would go to Raurkela, spend the day there and do the movie thing, the swimming thing, the dinner thing, and then go back home late in the night. En route back to Kansbahal, there used to fall a small Tarni Ma temple. And every second or third week, my mother would sort of signal to my father, and he would stop. And we would enter this temple, and the boys and dad would do their darshan and leave the temple. And then my mother, I would remain by my mother's side. My mother would stand in front of Tarni Ma and burst into tears, and she would bawl. She would bawl her heart out. And I remember, I can relive that emotion right now. I used to be angry. And I used to be angry at the deity for making my mother cry. I couldn't understand what was going on. And none of us spoke to my mother about it. She would do her crying, and then we would leave the temple, and we would sit in the car, and my mom would transform into her even more enhanced, positive, vibrant, fabulous self. Ma never pulled me in my childhood. My Ishtadevta was Lord Shiva, except for the 2.5 years when my husband fell ill. And that was the only period in my life that Ma Durga pulled me. I would go to the Durga Ma temple and burst into tears. And I would cry and I would bawl and I would work out my fears, my anxieties, my dread, my helplessness. And I would drain myself out and then come back to looking after my husband. Those are the only 2 years, the 2.5 years that Durga Ma pulled me to herself. I do not try and understand it with the mind. I thank Ma for having helped me walk that very, very difficult, the most difficult period of my life with Felicity.
No, but that, thank you for sharing that with all of us. And the fact that, but we still, there are people, the skeptics, who will, question you. How do you answer those, first of all, because in your stories, when you write about Ram, Ravan, this thing, you give each character life, there's a backstory, there is a certain, this thing to it. Is it also, maybe it's a vehicle of communication, of identification, making it a more personal connect? Is that the reason?
It is, yes. And look, if there is something that has survived for so long, despite so many attacks, and if it has still kept our country reasonably, many nations also show post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
if they suffer repeated invasions. You see that in the Arab world. You know, the Arab world suffered invasions from the same people who invaded us. The ones who destroyed the greatest Arab empire were the Turks. Same people invaded us too. Okay, and the Delhi Sultans and Mughals didn't look like Ranveer Singh or, you know, they would, to us they would have looked Mongoloid. They were Turks, right? But you find even today in the Arab world, there's still post-traumatic stress disorder out there. They haven't come, because after that the Europeans came, same people came here. Whereas India is still relatively stable, relatively calm. Per capita violence is relatively low. I think a large part of it is actually our spirituality. We must try and understand what is the strength in it. And that's what I try and put across in the books. Skeptics have a reason to talk, which is why we put that character of Adarsh.
Yeah.
So we haven't written it like a Western non-fiction book, which is normally, like a textbook. This is the case, I have to convince you of it.
Correct.
This is written like an Upanishadic dialogue or a Socratic dialogue, as you said rightly. You have multiple points of view. Now you read it, you make up your own mind. We are showing all points of view in there.
There's a very interesting chapter called Decline of Wisdom, Rise of Faith. Are the two not related? You cannot be faithful and believe in...
Didi can answer
do
this,
I
but
ask
okay,
Anil
let me put it this way. You know the story of the Garden of Eden? Adam and Eve were told not to eat an apple. What is the name of the tree from which they weren't supposed to eat that apple?
जो नहीं पढ़ा वही आता है.
It's the tree of knowledge.
Yes, of course.
The tree of knowledge of everything. Okay. That shows an attitude, because see, knowledge has risks. I'm not deriding that attitude, because knowledge is often a path to unhappiness and destruction. Frankly, we see that in the modern West, right? That was never the dharmic approach. Now, so if you want to stay away from knowledge, have faith. It'll give you happiness. Very nice. And nothing wrong with that choice. I'm not deriding that choice. It's a fair choice. But in the Indian way, we are not told to stay away from that apple. We are told to go for the entire tree, right? But we are told we must prepare ourselves for acquiring knowledge first. Viveka, right? That's the entire concept actually in all our scriptures. Prepare yourself and then go for that knowledge. And once you've learned everything that there is to learn, you get nirvana, you get moksha, you become God, right? So, yes, there is at times a choice. Central in our way of life is not faith. Central is wisdom. You can have faith or you cannot have faith. Faith is, I have faith. It's a good thing to have, but it's not central. Central is wisdom.
Okay.
Priya, around 3,500 years ago, a huge schism appeared in religion. With the birth of the Abrahamic God. The eldest child, of course, Judaism, and the younger two, siblings that went and, carried out the diktat, the doctrine that was put down against idol worship. In the books of the oldest child, actually, the Torah in the Old Testament, it's very, very clearly doctrinal that idol worshipping is evil. It's devil worshipping. Having said that, we're working on a particular project. We do feel that, all religions of the world can be divided into two basic simplistic divisions. One is the external social reform driven religions, and the other is the internal explorative religions. Both politics and wisdom and imagination are essential human traits. So you find that those religions that were born with an external prism invariably developed wisdom roots. Judaism with its Kabbalahism, and Christianity with its Gnostic approach, and Islam with its Sufi stream. And those with an internal explorative kind of a centrality, as Amish said, developed political expressions. And I use the word politics in its best format. There's something called good politics as well.
I mean, there's also a part in your book, where you talk about Lord Ganesh. I've paraphrased it in my notes. He's a god of wisdom and understanding, but he is not a service provider. I really like that. So why should he, you pray to God to remove your obstacles, but why should God remove your obstacles, you ask? So does he, in fact, there is a question asked, does he place the obstacles in your way? Does he help you remove them? Or does he, create the obstacles? Explain that thought.
And we explored this because this has been mentioned in some of our scriptures. That Lord Ganesh, of course, is the remover of obstacles, but he's the placer of challenges as well. And essentially, he gives you the strength to overcome those obstacles. And a lesson that we have learned, we've written an article on this, that actually the value of grief, muscles only grow against resistance. If you're actually not using your muscles, they'll atrophy and they'll become weak. Character also grows against resistance. Think about it this way. I've lived in the West for 4 years, and there are many things very nice about the West. But a thing that always troubled me is that the younger generation out there, they're perhaps the most privileged generation in human history. No one has actually had it better. No one has inherited better houses, better phone, everything, right? And yet they are so angry, right? They are so upset with life. Whereas in India, even a street child out here has that fire in their belly, has that lovely smile which will reach the eyes, right? Is it that actually obstacles and grief gives meaning to your life? That's actually what Lord Gautam Buddha had said, right? First of his 4 noble truths, everyone has grief. So that's the lesson, that are those obstacles placed there to give meaning to your life? Because without obstacles, you have ennui, and you see a generation which, with no obstacles, no real problem, creates problems for itself. You didn't use the right pronoun for me, I am having a mental breakdown. Whereas a kid in an Indian town who may have lost his fingers is still bubbling, going with life. So, do obstacles actually build character? That's the thought we place.
Okay. And also later on you also talk about that God, He raises the bar for those who can face obstacles better. So that's another very worrying thought also. If I face the challenge, there's a bigger challenge ahead.
So Priya, Nissim Taleb, the author of Anti-Fragile, has talked about a concept called post-traumatic growth.
Oh, okay.
He talked about PTSD. There also is post-traumatic growth. Trauma is an opportunity as well. You're absolutely right. Ganesh ji is called Vignakarta in the Yagnavalkya Smriti.
Correct. Vignakarta.
Vignakarta, not Vignaharta.
Smriti.
In the Yagnavalkya Smriti.
Maybe something at home, did you actually have these conversations? She explained a bit about Ishtevta and all, but did you all have these conversations at home? Where did your love for...
We grew up with this, just good fortune of birth. Our grandfather from our father's side was a Pandit at Varanasi, at Vishwanath Ji, and used to teach at BHU. Our grandmother from our mother's side was also a teacher. So we had that atmosphere in our family, both our parents,
Dangling conversations, you would say in your
book. We used to have tons of conversations. We grew up with all this, and we'd have philosophical discussions on the table, right? It's just good fortune of birth, actually, I guess.
Not only that, I'll share this with you. All 4 of us went to boarding schools, right? And my mother would write us these letters. Boarding school children, some of the children also have abandonment issues. It can be a painful, experience as well, which it never was for us, you see. Because every week, I remember there was a Friday class teacher period. The class teacher would come in with the letters for those students who've got the letters. And there was always a letter for 4 of us, and individual letters.
Individual.
And there were those who never got the letters.
Inland form, proper letters.
And there were those who never got the letters, and there were those who got the letters sometimes. But these letters that mom used to write to us, and it used to sometimes you write in those, inlands or envelopes, were thick with philosophical gyan. And mummy, and we barely understood what mummy is writing, which is mummy's, handwriting, and we would read those things. Zehn mein kahin na kahin ja raha tha. Inland mein, so she would, write on all the 3 sides. And then scribble, on top, and she had a
cover
method.
The whole. Yes, I remember.
She had a method.
And all the philosophical stuff.
Wow.
Right?
And it was all philosophical stuff. My father would have all kinds of crazy debates with us, on the dining table. So, what do you think, Amish? Are relationships driven by power or love?
And we had this conversation when Ashish and I were, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something.
Legoland, I wonder.
We couldn't afford Lego, no.
Right. So this is another way of keeping you all busy, no game. So do you have a Kul Devta? Do you have a family god?
Yeah, look, we're basically a Shaivite family. So from Kashi, from my father's side, my mother's side, Katyani, so mother goddess. But it is the Indian way, so all of us have our own Ishtadevta as well, and our puja rooms, of course, have all murtis of all of many Hindu gods, and in fact of other faiths as well. You know, so
Really?
yeah. So I have Mahavirji. My wife is a Jain. I have Gautam Buddha. I have the Star of David. I have lovely Byzantine
love to
thing
get
of
a
Jesus
picture of that.
Christ. Yeah, and that's the way I tried to. In fact, that's the way our parents' thing was. Of course, at the center would be the one we were. So at the center, would be Lord Shiva for me. But we would have all, and there's path of divine everywhere.
And I'll also like to add that I'm happy to say that a woman's Kul Devata changes with marriage. And
I didn't know that.
my my married Kul Devata became a Kul Devi, Ambama.
Oh. But from your characters, since we have all your books also here, do you have a favorite character, or or Shivaji, of course, Shivaji, but
Lord Shiva is
Lord
my-
Shiva, but from your Ramchandra series?
Lord
I'll tell you
Ram
my
particularly.
favorite.
And I'll tell you why Lord Ram, because I think it's particularly relevant for today's day. I think India is recovering after many centuries of decline. Post 1991, just 30 years ago, India's GDP, a little over 30 years ago, India's GDP was smaller than the gross sales of two American car companies. Two American car companies made more money than all of India. We were that poor. Today, we've just gone ahead of our former colonial master, UK. We'll go ahead of Germany, Japan very soon. We are reviving in a way at a pace that is actually history making, right? At this point of time, I think we can learn a lot from Lord Ram, not just this thing of following rules. Indians, we could certainly learn that.
That is true.
Let us follow rules sometimes at least. But also in nobility of conduct, right? No matter how people behave with you, how you should behave. Right? Even when you're fighting, fight hard. I'm not one of those surrender and be a doormat types. Fight hard, but fight with dharma. When he defeated Ravan, Lord Ram said this wonderful line, Marna Tani Vairani, that at the end of death, all enmity is forgotten. And he treated, Lanka, the survivors, all with respect.
Yeah.
He treated Ravan's, the full, funeral ceremonies as should be done according to Vedic rites was done. That's a way to behave. We should not forget we are Lord Ram's people. Fight, jam ke lado. But we have to follow his conduct. Then I think we'll be worthy of our ancestors who sacrificed so much to save our culture.
In fact, the interplay between the brothers also, is that something you also got from your family?
Yeah.
I love the conversations between them and they're like pulling. But who was your favorite character in the Ramchandra series?
Parvateshwar.
No, Shivaji. He said Ramchandra.
Shivaji. Ramchandra series. Sita. I liked her. I loved her.
Because she's a warrior queen.
Yeah,
And she's
Sita
not
Ma.
the Sita that, there is... in fact, I believe you've been criticized also a lot for depicting Sita in that very
No, not at all. In fact,
Not at
actually, in fact, I presented the book to Modi ji. So, and he
tell me
held the
that.
cover, and he said, "I'm so happy to see this. You're presenting Sita Ma in a strong way." And I get emails even from Mithila that हमारे आराध्य की you have see the thing of seeing Sita Ma as, to use a term, weak, actually emerges from the television serial.
Sorry, that's true. Blame
If
it
you
on
see
her.
the Valmiki, I'm not, and Ramanand Sagarji did he did noble service, but in the Valmiki Ramayana, Sita Ma is not weak, right? She's not a warrior, but she's a very strong woman, and which was the way it was in those days. We had women, prophets in a way, right? Women sages. We had women who founded universities. That was the Indian way. Sita Ma was, and even showing her as a warrior is not something new. There's the Adbhut Ramayana, which is a very ancient version, credited to Valmiki ji, in which she's the one who killed the elder Ravan. So she is a warrior in that version.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But again, back to the book, there is also an argument, I don't know if I caught the whole of it, but is God an experience or a belief or a bit of both? If you could explain that line of thought.
Priya, I do think we, and I say this with great humility, that we understand nothing except through experience.
Right.
We think we do, till the experience happens. And that's when we understand that, nahin, pehle nahi.
A bit about yourself, and you, as I mentioned earlier, you were the longest serving director at the Nehru Center, but you're also seen as a sort of cultural ambassador for India, through your books. There's a renewed interest in India, in mythology. A foreign minister, in fact, recently said that we are all used to a Western construct. We talk about, why don't we talk about Kautilya? Why do we quote Western philosophers? And through your books, there is a reference points, people are picking up books, wanting to know more about India. Is it the right time and place for India to be famous? And you are definitely the right person for that, but also is the time and interest correct?
No, I think it's something that all 1.4 billion of us can do. This is, genuinely mean it, perhaps one of the most exciting times to be an Indian in the last many centuries, right? Remember, cultural influence always follows hard power. It's not a sufficient condition, but it's a necessary condition. If you have no hard power, cultural power doesn't survive, frankly. Now that we are acquiring hard power, and the world acknowledges that, our culture will also start getting more influential. What Minister Jaishankar ji said is so right, that Acharya Chanakya is called the Indian Machiavelli, which is ridiculous, right? Machiavelli managed a city. Acharya Chanakya managed 25% of the world's population. No, there is no similarity, right? And Machiavelli, there's almost no ethics. It is just very cynical and crude in exercise of power. Whereas Acharya Chanakya, if you read through he's ruthless, but always to a purpose, to serve the people. The king exists to serve the people, not for him to have a great time, right? And that comes through in the entire, not just the Arthashastra, Chanakya Niti, all of them. And we need to understand that, because we are so used to seeing the Western paradigm. As like when COVID was happening, I read these articles, we should learn from, with all due respect, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Look, New Zealand has less of a population than Andheri in Mumbai. No, there's nothing we can learn. Honestly, come on. You have to be kidding to think there's something we can learn, from. We're a continent, right? And we have our own traditions. And if we don't speak of our own traditions to ourselves, then who else is going to do it? Secondly, I genuinely believe our culture has something to add to the world. Like just in that Oxford debate that you were speaking of, the entire viewpoint from that Western atheist approach was that you can either have science or you can have traditions and religion. You can't have both. And I say if you're picking just one, it's not a good choice. But in our way, you can actually have both. Right? You don't have to pick one. You can be traditional and scientific at the same time. Right? This is a very valuable insight that India can give to the world. We must give it. And Minister Jaishankar, I think, is one of the finest, speakers of India. What Prime Minister Modi has done with the popularization of yoga, of India's narrative abroad. But all of us need to put our shoulder to the wheel, all 1.4 billion of us.
The concept of Sanatan Dharma, as you understand it.
Sanatan is something that has no beginning and no end. And Dharma is often erroneously translated as religion. Which is an incorrect translation. The correct word for religion is panth. Dharma is something that exists beyond religion. It's in a way above religion, actually. And the root of the word dharma is dhru, that which binds, that which sustains, that which is permanent. That's what actually Sanatan Dharma is. It's in a way a guidance for life. And I say it again, if a country has been through this experience for 1,000 years and we are still relatively peaceful, we are able to get our act together. In 1991, the dead hand of socialism was removed and we immediately just shot up. Indians who went, Indians were taken as indentured labor, which is practically slaves across the world. Okay, Caribbean islands, Fiji, South Africa, Malaysia, from all parts of India, Tamil Nadu, UP, Bihar, West Bengal, Maharashtra, right? Jump forward 150 years. In every single place, Indians are right at the top. Almost minimal crime, high education achievement, high economic achievement, being good citizens in that country but keeping their own culture alive, Mauritius, everywhere. If it is happening in every land that they've been to, then it's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. And that pattern is our culture. That culture is dharma. You're seeing it in practice, and you're seeing it again in India too. Why should we not emulate this and share this with the world? I think it's a wonderful thing. Everyone has a right to question it. That is, we don't have a concept of blasphemy. No one's going to cut off your head, or send you to hell forever. It's okay, question it. But see the value in it. It is of immense value. And you can see it in practice everywhere. In the UK, see the Indian community out there, right? As compared to some other immigrant communities, which I will not name, who don't do that well. At the heart of it is dharma, and dharma is not just Hindu. In India, dharma is of course Hindu, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh, but it's also Indian Islam, Indian Christianity. Dharma informs all of us in the way we live.
You want to add?
May I add
please
just
do.
one little memory to lend weight to what Amish said so beautifully and so powerfully. To sort of bring the story of my mother and Tarnima full circle, because he mentioned Indian Islam. In Kansbahal, we had an uncle called Iqbal uncle. He used to work with my father and would every once in a while come home and tutor the twins. To this day, to this current month that we are living in,
Really?
Iqbal uncle calls up my mother and tells her, Bhabhi, Tarnima mein chadhawa de diya. He visits Tarnima Mandir and he sort of gives the dengi in my mother's name. And the last month.
And we left what, 40 years? No,
Yeah, I was
35
11,
years
12
back.
for crying out loud.
Yeah. And Iqbal uncle still does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is India.
Yeah,
That is
and the last month he said, Bhabhi, you'll have to come to Kansbahal, because it's my money, not yours. And my mother said, Iqbal, tumhare paise aur mere paise ek.
एक ही है. On that note, what next from both of you? What are you going to be writing another book?
Oh, yes, certainly. Couple of projects that are cooking in our mutual heads.
We are exploring different facets of dharma.
Yeah.
Because we feel that sadly our education system doesn't teach this.
Yes.
Our education system is still very colonial, sadly. So, can we through our books explain some of these philosophies? That's what we are trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what else? I've any other book that you are writing on your
On fiction, I will have a book coming out on Rajendra Chola in some time. I'm writing that, the great Tamil emperor. The great Indian emperor from Tamil Nadu.
well said.
And also the 5th book of the Ramchandra series, which will connect it to the Shiva trilogy. The 5th book of the Ramchandra series can be seen as the -1 book of the Shiva trilogy, because actually they are connected. So some clues I had left in Immortals of Meluha in 2010 will get finally tied up with this 5th book. This 5th book is called Rise of Meluha.
Wow. So when is that?
takes some time.
Oh, no. So we are booking you already for the books. But thank you so much for this conversation and wish you all the best with your books. Thank you. Thank you so much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.